My 16-year-old son, Naftali, sends us a text and says he's on his way home. Next thing we know, we're in the middle of the most surreal situation.
3 Israeli teens disappeared.
Abducted, quote, by a terrorist organization.
The Israeli army staged huge security sweeps looking for the missing teenagers.
The country has really been riveted on this story.
People gather to call for the safe release of 3 teenage boys.
We just want them back in our homes, in their beds. We just want to hug them again.
Authorities believe those boys are now dead.
The bodies of 3 missing Israeli teens have been found.
Israel is mourning as funerals were held for the 3 teens.
The grief and outrage over these murders tonight in Israel is extraordinary.
Those 18 days, they were filled with the darkest hours, but also amazing hours. We discovered our family, our friends, our community, our country, our people. People all over the world had thousands of grassroots initiatives. I spoke to people in Cape Town, in Kathmandu, in Australia. There were delegations from all over North America, Europe. People all over were saying, these are not just your boys, these are our children.
I don't do lectures, at least not on this. I try to have conversations. So, like in a couple of minutes after I say something I didn't think of yet, I'll probably turn to you and say, you know, there's so many directions we can go with this. I'd like to speak about what's interesting to you. So go ahead, you know, ask. And basically, I'll put it this way, no question is too personal, just because I've learned not to answer questions I don't want to answer, okay? But, so feel free, if something's interesting to you, go ahead and ask it, and there's a whole, you know, world of things, and it doesn't have to be a question-answer, it could be a conversation, you know, if there's something, I'm sure there are many things I can learn from you. So, I hope, you know, something about my sense of time this year is a little bit weird because sometimes it feels like that all happened 5 minutes ago and sometimes it feels like it's been 1,000 years. But that's me because it's, you know, so close to home. And recently I started showing, you know, a clip or something because I don't know how other people experience it, but I feel it's not too presumptuous to take the opportunity to thank you, because, you know, I don't know where exactly you were last summer, but from the interactions I've had with Jews over this last year, I kind of know that for many, many, many of you, most of you, it was checking the news every so often, and the signs on the lawns, and the magnets on the refrigerators, and the names in the siduri, whoever uses them, and mostly the open heart and the ability to connect and to share what we were going through. And I think I said it on the thing, it literally meant the world to us. In a world where, unfortunately, almost every day, thousands of people are murdered and nobody winks. 3 teenagers did come home from school, and millions of Jews around the world, and some very decent non-Jews too, were losing sleep. And just a few months ago, my family and myself finally went on a short vacation, like for 4 or 5 days, and we were leaving the country with a bunch of passports, and we were coming to this booth where the lady has to keep her face straight because she can't say she recognizes anybody. It's, you know, everybody goes through the same line, and she had a terrible, terrible cold, and the lady from the other booth was giving her tissues, and as I was coming close, I saw tears coming down her cheeks. Now this is maybe 4 months ago. And I come over and I say, you don't really have a cold, do you? And she says, I apologize, you lived in my home the whole summer. And then we reached our destination, and 3 different people told me the exact same sentence. So, again, putting it in the context of the general world, it's nothing that could be or should be taken for granted. I think it speaks volumes about who we are and definitely who we could strive to be. And the ability to open up and to connect and to share with somebody else's hardship it's almost miraculous to me that so many people could care so much. So, to keep my opening statement simple, it's just toda rabba, from the bottom of our hearts. And now it's the dreaded moment where I have to shut my mouth and see if somebody wants to stop it, Yeah, thank you. Yes?
I want to know whether you can tell us a bit more about the Unity project and the ideas behind it, what inspired you, and just maybe give us more information about this incredible initiative.
Right. So, something about what was going on, not one thing, the whole thing that was going on. And it took, we were searching for the boys for 18 days, and then there was a shiva, and the whole, and within a couple of days, there was a feeling of something different going on. And after a few days, I chose from my whole family the most non-mystical, rational person I know. He's a scientist, he's very, and I asked him, give me a reality check. Is something really going on, or is this just, a suffering mother trying to rationalize her suffering? And he said, no doubt, there's something going on. Now, of course, he was also family, and it was part of it. So once we thought about, we got up and we started thinking about, it's not even, on one hand, it's thinking about commemoration. I guess anybody who lost someone dear, especially if they were young, thinks about, so what can we leave in the world from this young life? But also some kind of sense of responsibility, because I feel this summer, there's an expression in Hebrew that says, Sh'at Ratzon. I don't even know how to translate it. It's an hour of, what? Opportunity. Okay, it was an opportunity. But a special hour where not only our hearts are open, but something is, it's a window of opportunity, but in the larger, higher sense, and that it's our responsibility not to totally miss out on that, and the way a person prays on just weekday is not like the way they pray on Motzei Shabbat and Motzei Yom Kippur on Eyal, the holiest moment in the year. So I don't expect us to stay up there. But at least if we can go from here to here or something, anything we could preserve from the spirit of that summer is, I feel like our profession is, this year is Lotzi Matok Me'az, to take the sweet out of the bitter. And there's a whole lot of sweet to be taken out. Specifically, the Unity Project, the title is the Jerusalem Unity Prize, and the prize is just an excuse. The mayor of Yerushalayim, Nir Barkat, had this idea, and the parents were very excited about it, the 6 of us, and it's a whole big project. And one part of it is that we, the nominations, and we acknowledge people that work day to day around the year to bring people together, especially people of different walks of the Jewish world, the ones that dress differently, believe differently, have different dreams for the future, and still, sit together respectfully and connect. And I think Rabbi Lord Jonathan Zaks said, don't agree with me, just care about me. So that's one of our slogans. And around that, there's a whole lot of this Unity Day, the boys, the day they were murdered, hopefully is going into the Israeli and Jewish calendar. I know already in the Ministry of Education, it's already in the yearly calendar, as a day to, recalibrate our hearts, open, and just do something to promote unity. In the state of Israel, it's unity within the Israeli society. Israeli society has the Jewish parts of it and also the non-Jewish part of it, and of course everything's very complicated. And around the world, and it's the Jewish world. It's Jewish unity. It's Achdut. This year there was an amazing response from communities all around the world and all around Israel, and adults and youngsters, and people were doing a lot of kinds of things. I don't want to start going into it. And some amazing people got prizes for devoting their lives to this. Whether it's people that walk together on the Israel Trail and make people talk to each other, or Bet Chabad Bangkok, if you ever get there, amazing place. Israelis get to Bangkok because that's almost the first place. Nepal, India. From England, I don't know how often you get to those. You have to do 3 years of army and then feel like you want to run to the furthest point in the world, and then you do the Far East. The kids, that's the project. And I hope it's effective. I hope it does real things in the world. I hope I'm not kidding myself when I say that it's not Naftali's name that I need people to remember. It's what we felt. It's how much we liked being what we were that summer. We felt good with that, with the ability to hope for something and to work together towards it. And so okay, and I know day-to-day life is not exactly that.
Can you tell us a bit about Naftali and what he was like, what he did, what his interests were?
Thank you. Naftali was 16 going on 17, and Gilad was like 6 months younger than him, and Eyal was 18 going on 19, and actually Eyal and Naftali's birthdays are next week, which means, like right when we were getting up from the Shiva, it was only Naftali and Eyal's birthday. And he was mostly a teenager. He went to a wonderful yeshiva high school in Kfar Etzion, a very special place that one of Naftali's friends told me that in the search everybody was together, and then there was vacation. It all happened on the last day of school. And in vacation, it was very hard for their classmates because they were alone. Each one went home, and it's like a dorming place that they spend all the time together. And when they came back to the beginning of the new year, the 12th grade, and last week I was in their graduation, which was an interesting experience. And it's a kind of school where you're allowed, usually 11th graders are very, very cynical, and Naftali too had a very cynical sense of humor, and it's a kind of place where people tend to wear their heart out. And he said when we gathered together again in the beginning of the year, the parts of Naftali and Gilad that were in each and every one of us came together, and we felt like we have them again. And it was much easier to be together. So those were his friends, and he was, very talented. Sports, music, guitar, choirs. Over the last year, he got like an MP3 player with every sort of music he can put his hands on. Jazz and classic and Hasidic and Israeli and oldies from it. He got me to put whatever I thought was good music on his player. And when his sisters asked him, "This is what you listen to?" he said, "You have to hear every song at least 3 times before you decide." So the MP player became a metaphor, like every kind you can expose yourself. What can I say? It's weird speaking about your child. When I first was gonna we got in the beginning an advice not to speak directly to the media, but to let sisters, brothers, someone from the family to speak because of experience. And at some point, we felt we have to go out and say thank you, and we did. And then a later point, the Prime Minister said, you've got to speak to foreign media because it's important that the world knows about it. And we were actually trying to buy time for the government to do whatever they have to do to find the boys. And then I was preparing to speak on, and so my sister was doing these interviews before, and she gave me a simulation to prepare for it. And then she came up, so she was sitting as the reporter, and she said, well, tell me about your son. And I kind of said, he's, a nice guy. And she said, no, that's not the way to go about it. Say he's a great kid. It's hard to speak about your child. But there were times I would walk in the street and strangers would stop the car and say, Geveret, הבן שלכם צדיק. Mrs., you have your sons are righteous, they're tzaddikim. Because of them, the terror tunnels were found. And first of all, I would say, my son, Sadiq, the one that fights with his sister all the time. And I also never, ever, ever would make lines between two events and say, this happened because of that. I don't know what the story of the tunnels is. There are many things to say about that. It's part of the narrative of last summer, but I would never presume to know how God runs the world. So not even say, oh, the tunnels were discovered or people were saved. I don't know how it works. I did see with my own eyes how if a war was coming, and a difficult war with sitting missiles and sirens and many casualties. Over the summer, there were 75 casualties. We couldn't approach it when we were all torn apart, and as in the condition the society was, a couple of months before that. And the 18 days we were looking for the boys kind of solidified us, prepared us, brought us together. People were going out of their way to be helpful, to be caring, to be nice to each other. Israelis were very nice on traffic lights. Doesn't happen. So this lady would stop me and say, oh, he's a tzaddik. And I'd say, yeah, sure. But the things they don't understand. He's a high school kid. When you speak about high school kids, it's mostly potential. It's mostly everything that could have been. And it's everything we miss. But that's all the private moments and the things. And I can speak about sport and music and Torah and the ability to be, on one hand, very, very cynical, on the other hand, know how to pray amazingly. Not that I was in his head, but I would watch their mother. Thank you for the question. Did I ever question my faith? For some people, faith is a solid stone, like a rock in their life that never changes. And for others like myself, sometimes you feel very close, sometimes you feel distant, sometimes you have doubts. And for me, it's that kind of relationship. It's dynamic. And so by definition, it doesn't have to be, this steady rock that never moves. But being in a situation where you're so vulnerable and so fragile, and the thing that you want more than anything else in the world is totally out of your control, it's a lesson in humility. And for me, a lesson in humility is a lesson in faith, because it gives you proportions to your life. I feel that we live in an era where we tell ourselves that with enough technology and enough medicine, and we're so bright and successful, whatever, we'll all live happily ever after. But it ain't so, whatever accent I have, it's Israeli American. It's not British. Nobody promised me a rose garden. Hakadosh Baruch Hu doesn't owe me a thing. And if anything, it made things real. It made prayer real. It made being in a very needy spot. We actually speak about now, if the Wi-Fi is working or not, but life and death. For me, if it did something, it only strengthened. But I understand this psychological idea or notion that if you experience something difficult or a loss or a disappointment, you might feel forsaken, and that might, create a big problem with your faith. To me, it seems irrational. Before, there were bad things happening to other people, and I was a believer, and now something bad happened to me. So what changed? So from that point of view, that's where it is. I'm not going to apologize for that. There were other things that were going on, like in the funeral. There were three parts to the funeral. There was the last part was there must have been between 100 and 150,000 people there. My 16-year-old son, and it was the prime minister, whatever. And we came from three communities. And we had the part before that in our community, which was very significant to us. And we had a part that was like the first part of the funeral, and that was that we spent a few minutes alone in the room with Naftali. And we asked our older children who wants to join us. So Naftali, he has a brother that's 2 years older than him, and he came in. And I remember my husband speaking to him there. And for me, mostly I was looking how tall he was, and he didn't finish growing yet. And I had a very strong sense of, this is his body, it's not him. So I know we speak about the separation of soul and body, whatever, but that was like in my face. So that's part of the spiritual experience. Also, not in a way that relates to faith, but in a way that relates to heritage. He joined this unfortunate but very respectful club of people that were murdered because they're Jewish. Wasn't looking for a membership in there, but it does give context. It connects you to thousands of years of history. When we got up from the shiva, some young lady called me. I don't know where she got my phone number from. But she said, like everybody, I was so involved and I was praying, and now I'm so angry at Hashem. And they told me I should call you. Really? So, like many of you might have told her, I told her, anger is also a form of relationship. Being as angry is part of, and for me, anger is a waste of energy. And so that's also part of the picture.
Yes. You managed to get the video working if you want to show it now.
Thank you. Yeah? Yes?
We see that you cope unbelievably well, but how do the rest of your family cope?
My children? My husband? Thank God my husband and myself are on the same page as far as how we deal with loss, because sometimes another hardship is when there are big gaps in the style of grieving, and that's another strain that you have to deal with, and we're in the same page. I could actually look at 3 families here and say, it's painful, there's a big loss, there's terrible, we just miss him terribly. But we're all doing okay. Over this year, I I had the opportunity to meet a lot of families that are dealing with loss. And I say dealing because it's an ongoing thing. People come and they say, 20 years ago, and I said 20, I can't imagine 20 years from now. But it's still a very live experience for them, and their loss is a loss. And when you're grieving, people come over to you, and mostly their messages, they tell you that their story, and their message is, you should know there's life afterwards, and now you feel like your world collapsed. And I remember that every day at the end of the Shiva, I would look back at the day and I'd say to myself, I heard so many powerful stories today, what people go through here. So I've met those families where you're not allowed to cry because we're strong and because he's looking at us and he doesn't want us to cry. And I've seen the families where you're not allowed to laugh because we suffered such a loss and how dare we. And there are always people that come over to you and they say, we put a smile on our faces for the children, for the grandchildren, to go to work, but you and I know it's all a mask. And the truth is I give them a credit for the mask they're wearing because it gives them the ability to function, to take care of their kids, to go to work. And everybody has to choose their own style, what works for them. I don't want to walk around this world with a mask on my face. It doesn't stick well. So my personal style is to cry when you cry and to laugh when you laugh and to try to experience the full spectrum of life, of emotions, of experiences, of blessing. I have this paraphrase I did on Parker Palmer, American. He says, he didn't say this, I said this. I can feel pain. I don't have to become my pain. I can feel sorrow. I don't have to become my sorrow. And in my inner landscape, there's so many other forces and talents and experiences and blessing, so much blessing. And if I would, I would take this bucket of black paint and spill it all over my life, it would, first of all, it would be a horrible ingratitude because, thank God, we really have a lot of blessing in our life. We have this terrible wound, but, and also to just be stupid. For me, it would be, not a smart thing to do. So I feel like sorrow and sadness, they're legitimate, and depression is dangerous for me. It's a place I don't want to go. And, well, you asked me about my family, and I'm telling you about myself. So the truth is, this is the message the kids are getting, I think. Because, every parent has the times that are extremely difficult for them. There's Gilad's father, Ophir, speaks about Birkat Kohanim. In the diaspora, it happens 3 times a year. Here it happens all the time. And the custom is that in shul, the father covers his sons together with him with the talit. And Gilad has 5 sisters. And he was an only son. So, in the men's section, when Gilad's father is wrapping himself in talit now, he's alone. And he says that's one of these very painful moments. For us, a lot of times, an especially hard time is Nirot Shabbat, when we sing in the Shabbat table. Because Naftali was extremely musical, and he sang in choirs, and whatever, he always did the harmonies. And one of the first Shabbatot, my 10-year-old daughter ran to the couch, and she turned around, and she was looking at me, and I saw in her eyes, she's asking permission to cry. And I came over to her, and I said, Nona, it's beseder gamur to cry. It's fine to cry. And you know what? It's also fine to be happy. And I feel many times people lack the permission. They feel like there's some kind of proper behavior, and if they don't do that, they're betraying their lost child. So what I'm trying to tell them, I hope I'm getting it through, our children, I think they have permission. They have permission to weep if they need to be happy, which they are most of the time. My 6-year-old saw me packing something, it was a few months back, and she said, Ima, do you still put on your makeup only when you get to work? because you cry on the way. And it's like, she's a character. So I said, I said to myself, you should be happy she says this. You don't want her to think it's business as usual. So I said, Nama, it's not like every day the whole way I cry, but I reserve the right to cry. Yeah? The same Nama said to me, I love telling stories about her. It's actually good that Naftali died before I started school, first grade. I said, really? And she said, because he's been coming with me to school every day since. So this is, they're young. And before they go to sleep, they say Kriyat Shema L'Mitah. It's like you say Shema Yisrael before you go to sleep. And then there are all kinds of verses you might add. And one of them is like a verse in a way of the guardian angels. They say, B'Shem Hashem Elokei Israel, in the name of Hashem, the God of Israel. Mimini Michael, on the right is Michael, Mismoli Gabriel, Milfanai Uriel, Machorai Raphael. These are the names of angels. And then they started saying, rhyming it. They said, Mimini Michael, Mismoli Gabriel, Milfanai Uriel, Machorai Raphael, Naftali Nistakel, Naftali is looking, Ve'al Roshi Shechinat El, and God is above my head. And the first time I heard it, I don't know when they started. The first time I heard it, my 4-year-old got annoyed and he said, yesterday we said Naftali. And Noga said, but we repeat this 3 times. So ever since they've been saying one for Eyal, one for Gilad, and one for Naftali. And at first I thought it's just a cute story. But then I realized there's like a deep wisdom in it. They could, God willing, continue to say this until they're 80. And Naftali is up there with them. In a way, I don't, he has a place, he's with them. It's interesting that it came from them. Probably the hardest thing I ever did was when we got the final news to take each child and tell them. I remember one of them was she was feeling something in the house and she decided she's going to sleep by a friend, and we let her because our hands were full. And a few minutes, like an hour later, someone went to call her back home. So she came and she wouldn't come in. And she sat on the bench in the entrance. And then my sister called her in and she said no. And my sister told her, you don't want to know yet? She said, not yet. It's like, you could see them. And then a few minutes later she came in. And at that time we told each one of them, you're going to see Abba and Emma cry. We're very sad, but we're not falling apart in you. And we're going to return to be a happy family. And I think we're doing okay. I mean, we're watching to see there are no major dips. There are no, kind of monitoring the situation. But the house is full of, fighting and laughter and whatever goes on in a normal mess, terrible mess. No, you don't want to see it. I think we're there. Life is. There are no museums by us. We use his jacket. We play his guitar. If somebody needs to sleep in his bed, they sleep in his bed. There's no. So I think they're doing okay. With the older ones, it's a little bit more difficult because they were close in age, and so one is very active, and the other is very introverted, whatever. And I was very worried. She put a picture of Naftali next to her pillow, and she wouldn't talk to anybody, not to family, not to friends. And then one of the Shabbatot, when Naftali's high school friends came to us, they were amazing kids. Throughout the year, they came and they were with us, and it was good for them, and it was good for us especially. And one of the Shabbatot, when his friends were there, she took a box full of his pictures and she spread them and she started talking to them about Naftali. With them, she's allowed. And so I said, okay, everybody has their place. It's a life, it's a process, I'm sure it's. Thank God. I also must say, we had the most unbelievable support from, I said something about diaspora and everything, but I didn't say anything about my family and my neighbors. Before we could think of what we need, it was already there, and it was done so in such a sensitive and respectful way. Helping people is not very easy. You think you know what they need, but you don't want to impose, and you don't want to invade their family, and you don't want to undermine their parental authority or whatever it is. And people were unbelievable. So whatever good situation, thank God we're in, it's not up to us. We have so much help. Yes, go ahead.
Has what occurred altered your opinion on the
Can
Palestinian?
someone translate?
How
has what occurred?
Has what occurred
Yes.
altered your opinion on the Palestinian people in the West Bank?
Thank you. I knew it's a political question. My politics didn't change. Whatever was before is the same. I was never naive, but I'm still hopeful. I think naivety is a very dangerous quality around this neighborhood. Along the whole ordeal, before and after, there were some very decent people, non-Jews, some of them Muslims, some of them local Arabs, some of them Palestinians from Gush Etzion that were in contact with us and were horrified and were supportive. And I had no problem accepting a delegation of Palestinians into my home because they not only came in peace, they were heartbroken. So I try not to make generalizations. I met my sons. My son just turned 5, and his kindergarten teacher met me in the street, and she said, "You know, the other day I overheard Shlomo speaking to his friends. They're all about 4 or 5 years old. Very, very serious problem there, and he was telling them, 'You're wrong. Not all Arabs are bad. There are bad Arabs and there are good Arabs, and there's whatever he was going to argue." So the kindergarten teacher said, "I guess he heard that at home." And it's true, because I don't want to raise my children on hatred. On the other hand, their beloved brother was murdered for no reason except the fact that he was a Jewish kid on his way home. So it's a balance. In the prayer, there's a saying, "Oseh shalom uvoreh et hakol," that God creates peace and makes peace and creates everything. Really, that's just PC, politically correct, for the real verse in Yeshayahu, in Isaiah, that says, "Oseh shalom uvoreh ra," that Hashem makes peace and also created the evil. There is evil in the world. And sometimes you face it, and it does have a name, and you have to admit that the place you're living in is a very complicated place. So I don't feel that politics changed for me. And on the other hand, I'm not big on that. Say here, I'm playing the role of Naftali's mother. When I vote, I have, I'd like to say once in 4 years. Here it happens every year and a half. I have a chance to say something about politics, but whatever. That's where I'm at. Yes.
Where were you when you found out all of that?
So Naftali, it was the last day of school, and at some point we spoke to him in the afternoon. He wasn't sure if he always used to come back in the morning, and some 9 o'clock he texted us that he's coming home. We only saw it about an hour later, and we said, "Oh, great." 3 weeks later, when we knew everything, we realized that we sent our answer 2 minutes after it was all over. And we went to sleep because he's a big, responsible boy. He'll come. And the next thing we know, it was 3:30. There were policemen coming to our door because Gilad's family lost contact with him, and they were waiting for him. And they started making phone calls, and friends said that they left the school together, et cetera, et cetera. So for a minute there, I thought it's all about just going upstairs and finding them. And then we rang him, and when the phone was dead, we knew we were in big trouble. But I was thinking about car accidents, something on the way. The intelligence was so detailed and so fast that within hours we knew almost everything there is to know except where they're being kept. 2 hours into the, since we found out, we already had the last location of the phones in the Hebron area, which is the direct opposite direction of where they were headed. Within a day, they knew by name and face who most of the people involved are. There were actually 25 Hamas Hebron people and another whole bunch of Hamas Gaza. The funding came from Gaza. They bought 2 automatic weapons and 2 pistols and 2 cars and whatever. It was a whole organization. And in that night, directly, there were 3 people involved in actually doing it. And one was home waiting for a sign to start feeding the hostages, come and take care of them. And they apparently tried to do this Wednesday night. And when he, they had this sign that they made up, and he went to check the sign, and it wasn't there. So he asked them, he called them and asked them, how do I know this? I'm sorry. The 2 murders were 3 months later killed in Hebron in a battle. And the one that was helping them, he was caught, and he had a trial, and he's in jail now. So the story he told was that he was expecting to come and help them, and the first night they said they didn't find the proper victims, and then the second night they came and they asked him to come and bury them, to help them bury them, and he asked, but we were talking about hostages, because that was the plan, and the murderers said that they resisted and that's why they killed them. I don't know if that's true. It might be true, I'm not sure it's true. It could have been other reasons. So everybody was very, very honest with us throughout those 18 days. And they told us, we know from the phone call, there was Gilad rang the police, like a 911 number, I don't know how it is in England, and he said, we're kidnapped. And the phone stayed on for about 2 minutes. The terrorists had no idea that the phone is on. And the police, the place it got to gets about 50% prank calls, and they decided it's not a true call. And that wouldn't have made a difference after the beep, because within the 2 minutes that are taped on the phone, there are shots, with a muffled shot. So we were told it could be that they were all murdered. It could be that 2 were murdered and 1 was kept alive as a hostage, because all the intelligence shows that they intended to keep live hostages. It could be that they're wounded. It could be that it was just to scare them. All the possibilities are possible, and they told the parents, they told us, and there's a very good chance that they're alive. And for me as a mother, I don't care if very good is 40% or 10%. It's not an imaginary chance. It's not like I'm deluding myself. It was the work assumption was that they're alive, and that's how everybody was working. And the truth is, I believe that if that wouldn't have been the assumption, they might have not been found at all. And, now, at the time people said, oh, not knowing is the worst thing. Well, I said, I'm willing to wait 5 years not knowing as long as I get my kid back. But now that I know that it was all over within minutes, it's the greatest, one of the biggest chasadim, grace, whatever you're going to call it, that we did get them back. Because, I was waiting for my son for 18 days. I met Rachelli Fraenkel, who was waiting for her son for 81 days. The mother of Gilad Saadon waited for her son for 7 years, and these are all Hamas victims. I don't know how you can raise a happy, healthy family with that hanging over your head. So if there was any chance to get him alive, I'd wait forever. But, so just the reason I'm saying it is that I feel everybody was doing everything humanly possible, and that also everybody in the establishment was extremely honest with us. And And thank God that they were working under the assumption that there's a good chance that they're alive, because that's how they got home eventually. During that time, there was an IDF team that was stationed in our garden. Actually, there was like an army post in the garden, and it represents the collective wisdom of the state of Israel. Because unfortunately, we've been in this movie, time over time, and they learned that the family that goes through something like this needs someone to hold their hand, and they were there 24/7. And we had a lot of interesting experiences with that team. They were amazing, amazing people. And at some point, we were given the option to listen to the tape of Gilad's phone call. And each one of the parents decided if they feel it's right for them to listen or not. Like, Eyal's mother didn't hear it to this day. I decided I want to hear it. And I approached one of the negotiation team. He's a psychologist by profession, and I had no idea, and he didn't know either. We had no idea what we're going to hear in this tape. So I approached him and I asked him, "Can you prepare me for listening to this tape?" And he said, "So Rachelli, what are you afraid of?" And he said, "I don't know, this works on a whole different sensory system. I know I'm very focused and I'm fine, but I might fall apart." And he said, "So you'll fall apart, then what?" And I thought for a minute and I said, "Well, I guess I'll collect myself and get up." And he said, "Yeah." And those were such simple words, but for me they were profound. Because it was like, I later connected this to another story. Before Rosh Hashanah, like a week before Rosh Hashanah, before the holidays, a woman, wonderful woman called Chagit Rein, she's the mother of Breya Rein that was killed in Lebanon a few years ago. She called us and she said, "I just want to tell you that the fear of being in the holidays without him, now Rosh Hashanah without him, Sukkot without him, the fear is worse than the holiday itself." And I understood what she says. I heard her. And then these two stories came together for me, and I'm offering it to you. You don't have to be in this dramatic, surreal situation like we were. And it still will be true, I think, that sometimes the fear of what we're dreading is worse than the thing itself. And sometimes, even if the worst thing happened, and even if you fell apart, so you'll collect yourself and you'll get up. And whatever, it's just a story for me. Yeah. Sorry, I speak long too. Ken?
If there's one thing we could do in the matter of your children, what would you suggest for us to do? Or educate their souls, or something like that? What would you ask for us to do?
Thank you. Let's see. During the efforts to bring back the boys, there were people asking, so who's in charge? Is there a Gilad And Naftali, or the boys? And we felt very strongly that they shouldn't be top body organizing this. The power of it was that it was millions and millions and millions of I don't know millions, but so many local initiatives, grassroots initiatives, the ones that grow from, like the expression grassroots. It's local, it's strong, it works where it is. And in a way, I feel that any good that can grow from this tragedy is sheer profit for us. And the strongest things are things that happen locally and in a real way and in people's surroundings. Now, it could be anything. There was a community in just an example. There were many communities like this, but one of them I had met in Arizona that had collected 1,000 mitzvot in the merit of the boys when we were hoping to get them back, and then it became 1,000 mitzvot in memory of the boys. I had asked the rabbi there, didn't people lose their motivation? And he said, no, the motivation only grew. And they made this little cute movie where, you know, someone says, oh, I'll try not to speak ill of or some, you know, people said, oh, I decided to put on tefillin once a week, or to kasher make kitchen, whatever or to give charity. And after I saw the movie, some lady took me to the side and said, you know, the mitzvah I chose was I decided to date only Jews. So, you know, I'll just, at the end of that movie, the rabbi says, you heard on the phone call the terrorist saying, put down your head, put down your head. This is our way to pick up our heads high. And for me, it's, you know, it's wonderful. It touches their life. It's not. Personally, I have a bias towards achdut, towards people doing something to connect to other Jews that dress differently, that believe differently, that, you know, you might have very little in common, but really under that, we're family. And if we can connect to the people that are, you know, so-called strangers, but just in a real way. It doesn't have to be huge. So sometimes it's organizing local things, and sometimes it's just, you know, coming over to this neighbor and giving them cookies, whatever it is. So that's my bias. I like any project that promotes Jewish unity. And we keep on saying it's unity, not uniformity. When there was Unity Day, the slogan was "Come as you are," you know, just as is. I know that in the eyes of eternity, there's no difference between 16 years and 60 years. Still, emotionally, it's hard to deal with it. So the fact that good things are happening in the world, somehow in connection to these kids, it's definitely comforting. Yes.
Do you think the media made it worse for you?
In what sense?
Do you think that the way the media portrayed the whole situation, everywhere around the media, do you think it made it easier?
Well, I'll start with Israeli media. Our home was like the Big Brother's house. There were 40 cameras and, you know, all over the place. And the relationship with them was amazing because it was very respectful. Nobody ever went around the house to get some kind of paparazzi. You know, whenever, you know, if we were coming out for a statement and we said there won't be questions because it wasn't fine, whatever we needed. When the bad news came, they were weeping. So it was an amazing relationship with the media. And they played a very important role bringing our story out to the world. And when we were thanking them too. I didn't feel there was negative media. And, you know, it's hard for me even to imagine, but I could imagine that it would have been extremely frustrating if we couldn't get our story out. And one thing we did, you know, that did happen was it was out there. When I went to Geneva to speak in the Human Rights Council, I'm not a big believer in the UN. It's a problem. But the Human Rights Council is a platform. You get legitimacy for your story once it's out there. People come to so.
Because, you know, like if it's on the media, you're constantly reminded of what happened. Sometimes I don't know, maybe you thought, I don't want to hear it anymore. That's why.
So you know. During that time, we had a rule that was very important for us. I mean, just my husband and myself. We did not consume any media. We didn't open the internet. We didn't read newspapers. It was just too, you know, we can't place our energy on that. And we had this IDF team that if there was any real piece of information, it would come from them. And later, you know, a couple of months ago, I suddenly saw an interview that I gave during those days, and it was interesting for me to see it, but I didn't experience it the way you're describing it because it was, you know, what I want to read, I read, what I don't, I don't. I recently heard of some, some article of someone that was being critical, whatever it is. I don't want to waste my energy about that. I didn't even go to check it out. So, yeah.
How does it feel to have the support that you've got from Jews worldwide? Like,
how does it feel?
Yeah.
It's unreal. It's the magnitude of it is it's hard to grasp. It was hard to grasp there because I was getting pictures of shuls in the smallest places in the world where the names are tagged on the and to this day, the fact that I can speak to you about it, and in a certain sense, you remember the experience. You were there. You were with us, and I feel like a sort of partnership. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, and I know that there's so much other pain and suffering in the world that doesn't get such a huge hug constantly, and I don't know why. How we lost an awful lot, but how did it come wrapped with so much chesed, grace? It's besides saying people are unbelievable, and during the summer, because of the soldiers and everything, we met another amazing family and another amazing family, and every time you got the spotlight was on somebody new, you looked at it and you said, wow, look at these people. And then generally you say, wow, there's some unbelievable people around here, and they ask for too. I can speak for hours about how people went out of their way, speaking to the parliament members, and arranging Geneva, arranging, the next thing on our agenda was we were going to meet with the Pope. There were Italian Jews working very hard on that. And whoever couldn't do those things, they were praying, they were just, spreading positive energy, whatever people could do. So it's a terrible tragedy, but it was wrapped with so much, divine grace and grace from people. People were unbelievable. It all burned, including her sweater. So that's already a thing in our home. The sweater, the terrorist burned for her. So she got some special time with Naftali. I don't remember any dramatic last words. And even though I have an American background, we never ended conversations with "love you." I should have, but. No, I don't know. My husband spoke to him a few hours before, but it was technical stuff. Yes?
Did you go to the court to see the accomplice in the trial?
I didn't. My husband at some point felt that one of us, the parents, has to voice the victim's side. So he went there and just spoke his, what he had to say about the whole event. He might have had we saw the terrorist for a couple of minutes, but I didn't feel like I want or need to go there. Yes?
With regard to unity, what have been the most effective initiatives so far in promoting it, and what kept you back to London and hopefully some unity there as well?
It's a process. There's so many different people that could be involved. It's hard for me to point out. It's an excellent question. In fact, it's the $1 million question. How do we keep the unity? How can we promote it? How can we preserve some of it? I don't know how to give a very intelligent answer to that. I'm sorry. Yes.
Firstly, you're absolutely wrong. How would you like such a lesson?
Which?
Such a lesson. And everything in your life seems that with the tragedy what happened, how do you view it as a lesson?
No, I mean the tragedy is not a blessing. I would rather be in a different place than speaking here today. But truthfully, we are very. I remember the first night Friday night, We were back, I can't even say going to sleep because we weren't sleeping much at that time. And I remember sitting in my bedroom speaking to my husband and saying, even if the worst thing happens, we should, I don't remember if he said it or I said it, but it was both of us. Even if the worst happens, we should remember we're blessed. And we are. So I know sometimes at some stages, people get so stuck in the pain where they can't see the rest of the picture. And it often comes at the expense of the other siblings. Thank God. It's there. I want to acknowledge it. I want whatever. It's, even the people that are in the phases that are so stuck that they can't experience anything except the pain. Eventually, I hope they'll grow out of that phase. And in any given room, there's people dealing with loss and with, you know, a whole bunch of sad things that happen. Sometimes you deal with it this way, sometimes you deal with it that way, and it's a process. You, it's very individual. Yeah. Okay. So what I'm saying is it's not a matter of, you know, it's not even. I'm saying I'm not going to be judgmental about how different people deal. You deal with what you have to deal with the tools you have, and even if at a certain point it seems like it's all black, people usually eventually grow out of this phase to another phase, and you know, try to manage to feel the blessing again. Yeah.
So there are two statements that I heard you say in those 18 days, and both of them were statements that, you know, I understand them intellectually, but I don't understand how you could have said them in that place. One of them was when there was a bunch of seminary girls at the Kotel to pray for their return, and you were to them, God is not our servant, and He doesn't have to do what we ask. And the flip side of that was an interview on the Times of Israel, where they were asking you about how you feel about hostage negotiations after Gilad Shalit, and you said, you know, the leaders have to do what they have to do, but one thing they should definitely not do is listen to the mothers.
So I'll tell. So one story is we were coming back from Paris, who was parting from Obama, and we stopped at the Kotel to daven, and there was a group of like second graders that ran over, and they were saying, "We're saying Tehillim, and we're praying, we're saying, and everything's going to be okay." And I was feeling this anxiety that was growing over those days, besides being anxious for my son, that what would happen if things go wrong? What would happen to these kids? And what I was saying was, I believe he'll return, I believe it will be okay, but Hashem doesn't work for us, and even if this doesn't work out, I don't know what I said, whatever, stay together, whatever. And I could have put it more intelligently maybe, but then nobody would have remembered it. The truth is, I had no idea somebody's filming it. And if I would know, I would tell them to move away. But eventually, it kind of became viral, and it turned out that it was very important for us to have this conversation about what we think about prayer. That we never treated prayer as you know, some kind of cash machine. You put in, prayer on one side, you get results on the other. That's not what it's all about. And we had this discussion in some places where it was after the fact, you know, Nachshon Baxman, and then it sounds apologetic. But here we were in the middle of it, and we're discussing, the Israeli society at least was discussing prayer. The people that pray, the people that don't pray. And looking back, it was another chesed that little clip was filmed in the Kotel, because then we can speak about it. So I never ever treated tefillah as something functional. It's more about, and even though I see myself in the television saying, asking people to pray, it wasn't in the sense of, like, there's something called Iyun Tefillah, where when you hyper-focus as if you force God to do what you want, and that's forbidden. something you're not supposed to be doing. It turned out to be positive that this discussion took place. So the other thing was there was an interview in the Times of Israel. At the time, as I said, we didn't consume any media. And only a couple of months ago, I saw myself again in that interview. And it was interesting for me to see myself answering that question. He asked, what do you think about exchange deals of terrorists for hostages? And I was saying to him, you know, one day you might come here and you'll see me shouting off the rooftops, do anything to return my sons, and to return our sons. And I want to tell you now, and I think it was like 10 days into the situation, I want to tell you now that whether the correct answer is to give back, you know, to release 1,000 terrorists, or the correct answer is to endanger 10,000 soldiers, it's not me that should be answering that question. And, you know, this is a major question in Israel's life. It's a public issue, it's an expert's issue, it's a military, whatever. It's not the mothers. Now, it might be that my job is to scream from the rooftop, but your job is to remember that the mother is not the one that's supposed to decide. Whatever. We'll take one more. Yeah.
Were the boys targeted, or was it completely random?
They were waiting in a bus stop. It was as random as going to a Jewish area and looking for Jews. As random as that. Nobody knew them specifically. They were classmates, but Eyal was 2 years older than them, and he just joined them there probably a couple minutes before that. So they didn't know each other. It's random and not random. I don't want to make it. Our day-to-day life is very normal and you know, blissful, and we don't feel terror as an immediate threat. But during the last week, there were 2 horrible events of murders, and there was one that I found, they were both devastating. One that I found hard to grasp because there was someone, whatever, driving a car, and someone approached him and his friends, obviously an Arab, and he started chatting with them. Is there water in the spring? How you doing? Whatever. They spoke a little bit, and they were being very friendly. And afterwards, he walked away, and the car started driving again, and then he signed to them that he needs help. And they stopped. And then he shot them in the face. So that, you know, the fact that someone could be murderous and randomly shoot someone, that's one thing. The fact that you first create a human interaction and a friendly interaction, and then you do that, I don't know where that comes from, except the fact that he had to make sure that they're Jewish. So that's how random it is, you know. So it's not what I wanted to end with. So what was? I'm sorry, I don't like the tone. Yeah, go ahead.
You felt a very close connection with the other 2 families.
We didn't know each other before, but we have a lot in common. we also have a lot in common dealing with our children. Thank God we all have young children, and that, you know, if you feel like you want to put the quilt over your head and not come out for 6 months, so you have a 4-year-old climbing all over you, and he needs what he needs, and he's not going to let you go. So we're in a similar situation as far as that, and we have a lot of projects together. We have a WhatsApp group. We speak, whatever. We speak all the time. Yeah, we have a strong connection. It's a bond. It's like when once we had a small, you know, we were discussing something and we had a small disagreement. So we said we can't divorce each other. No, we're there together. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. You're into clapping here. I'm not just this. Just a bonus. Is it going to take 3 minutes and go on, or it's Naftali and Gilad were finishing 11th grade, and it was very difficult for their classmates to come back. And during the year, they did a few things that were, in a sense, commemorative, in a sense, therapeutic. And one of the things they did was they contacted a very known singer in Israel called David Deor, unbelievable voice. And they wrote together lyrics and music to a song. It's called Open Your Heart, Ptach Libcha. I think the version I have here doesn't have the English subtitle, so if you're interested, look up Ptach Libcha, or Open Your Heart. And what they did was they brought in the families, and they brought in the kids from school, and they brought in different kinds of singers from Hasidic ones like Avram Fried, and very secular ones like David Rosa, and all kinds. And it was like a unity project and a project for the kids to work out what they were going through. So just to finish up, I want you to hear this song. It's on YouTube. Yes.
פתח לבך ברחמים על בניך, כולם לדורות תשמע, בשמיים ניצבים לעד דבריך, ובארץ אמצא לנו נחמה. פתח לבך ברחמים על בניך, קולם לדורות תשמע, בשמיים ניצבים לעד דבריך, ובארץ אמצא לנו נחמה.
לך היו השלושה לאחד, וציוו לנו חיים,
עלו לתומם כאייל נקר על מזבח הבנים,
שמיים בחו מעל הגלעד, והארץ רעשה מתוך נפתולי הלב שרעד, חייכו בתמונה השלושה. פתח לבך ברחמים על בניך, קולם לדורות תשמע, בשמיים ניצבים לעד דבריך, ובארץ אמצא לנו נחמה.
ובין מצרים בקרוב עליי מרעים, התגלו במסך האבק,
שקרים שבתוך מנהרות מסתתרים מזימות שנורו למרחק.
הרוח נשבה ישנה חדשה, וקרבה לבבות רחוקים, מתוך תעצומות הנפש ביקשה
לא ליפול גם כשלא מבינים.
בתוך הטירוף
בין מרדף לנרדף תעלה זעקה
לשלום הנכסף
והעם שעייף
משנאת החינם
יתאחד בחיבוק אחים
בשמיים ניצבים לעד דבריך ובארץ המצא לנו נחמה המצא לנו